Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan and with me my colleague Parul Chandra. You're watching Talking Point, which is our flagship weekly series. Our focus this time is on the coronavirus, and I have with me General Narasimhan. He's in the National Security Advisory Board and he's well plugged into the coronavirus scene as it plays out presently in India. So General, welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
First question. We seem to have a lot of population, comparatively very fewer cases, about 70 or 80 odd. Even the US has far more, and their detection systems are, I presume, state of art. So what explains this?
The coronavirus actually is another version of SARS virus, which China experienced in 2003. The reason why it has not spread in India the way one expected it to is basically because the community to community transfer of this virus has not taken place. It is basically imported cases, people who have traveled to those countries where the infection was there. They, when they came in, brought this particular thing into the country. If you look at the Italian case, if you look at people who have traveled to Dubai and come back, those are the kind of people who got infected there and brought this virus inside. Once the virus has reached India, then we need to take enough precautionary measures to ensure that it does not spread. Mm-hmm. You also made a mention about United States, etc. In fact, the United States health system is under pressure at this point in time. In fact, there were reports to say that some of their kits were not effective enough to detect the coronavirus, etc. I'm sure they must have measured up to it as of now. The number of cases are definitely more than what we see. I think there are more than 500 plus cases there in US today. We have got about 73 cases as on today. There is an increase of 12 cases from what it was yesterday. So hopefully we should be able to contain it.
Mm-hmm. Do you presume that there are many cases going undetected?
There is a possibility of the cases going undetected because the only way it can be detected is when the patient runs a temperature. And if the patient is not showing symptoms of fever, it will be extremely difficult for anybody to actually pinpoint to say that this is an infection of the coronavirus. And particularly when you come in from abroad and come into the airports, etc., the test that is taken is for your temperature. And if you suppress the temperature but suppress the fever by having some medicine, etc., it will not show. Even if you are infected and if it is not, the fever has not manifested itself, it is very difficult to detect. In fact, there have been enough advertisements in the papers, etc., by the government to basically to tell people as to what symptoms they should look for, and if they find these symptoms, what help they should seek. So that has already been done in a very big way. Hopefully, that should help us. In fact, even in the mobiles, on the radio, on the TV, on WhatsApp, number of messages are coming as to what should be done. I am sure people will take note of it and take action accordingly.
If I may ask you at this point, General Narasimhan, what steps can be really taken to contain such a contagious virus, especially in a densely populated country like India?
One thing is that first is the detection part. Detection is something which we need to keep looking for new cases coming up. And the way probably to contain it further is to ensure that all those people who came into contact with the infected person are kept in isolation. That is very, very important so that they do not infect others in the bargain. So this is something that we need to do, and I think the Health Ministry has already taken enough measures, plus Cabinet Secretary has taken a couple of meetings, and then yesterday he put out the instructions for the other departments to follow. So there are a number of actions that have already been taken. The main thing is detection. Once you detect, look at people who have been in touch with that person who is infected, isolate them, and then ensure that this thing doesn't spread. People who also have suspected symptoms, cough and cold is a common thing in the season. If they suspect that they seem to have some kind of symptom which has been put out, they should self-quarantine themselves in their home and not move around. In China, there are 3 color codes that have been given to people: green, yellow, and red. If it is green, you are free to move around. If it is yellow, you have to self-quarantine yourself for 7 days. And if it is red, you have to quarantine yourself for 14 days. You are not allowed to move around. So that is something with the RAFD tag, they have given it to everybody.
I was just wondering, you mentioned there is no community transmission as yet. Right now, all the cases are those coming in through airports or perhaps seaports, although I haven't heard very much of that either. Perhaps we are now in the early stages of this spread in India. And given the large volumes of people who travel by train, is that a danger, a potential maybe flashpoint?
See, it is like this. The reason why probably you have not had cases from train travel, etc., unless an infected person has traveled in that train and is infected others, it will be extremely difficult for this virus to spread. So far, whatever detection has been done is from the people who have traveled abroad and come into India. So that is the mode in which it is spreading as of now. So I get a feeling this is likely to go up a little bit before it subsides. But I think enough material has been put out for people to look at and then understand what they should do. And I'm sure we should be responsible enough to do the things that have been asked from us.
You mentioned that most of the cases that have tested positive so far have been cases of people who had traveled abroad, Italy, Iran, Dubai, etc. So, should the Indian government have suspended visas for those coming from abroad into India earlier? They announced it yesterday, but could it have been done sooner?
No, they announced it yesterday. That was a second revision actually. Earlier itself, there were restrictions imposed on people who were traveling in from those high infection countries like Iran, Japan, China in any case,
China.
Hong Kong, Singapore. I mean, all these places, what they had said earlier was 5 countries they nominated which were highly infected. And from those countries, when people were coming in, they were supposed to be there, visas were revoked earlier. And then in an emergency, if somebody was to move, then they were supposed to contact the Indian embassy or the High Commission in that country and explain the reason, and thereafter the High Commission or the embassy would do the needful. Yesterday, they have expanded it to many other countries. When they initially did that, even other countries like Singapore, etc., people are coming in from there. It was mandatory for them to go through the screening, medical screening in the airports. So that was initiated at that time with what was available in the information at that point in time. As we found that more number of cases were coming in, I am sure the government has done the correct thing by putting in those restrictions which they came out with that instructions yesterday. So I think that is the right way to go. Instead of panicking everything and starting at the initial stage itself and making everybody paranoid about it, I think step-by-step process was the correct way in which the government has done this.
Surya, with your permission, I want to ask him another question. And this is really, I think, which is something that's worrying all of us. Is the Indian system or the health system equipped to handle a scenario like what has happened in, say, Italy or Iran?
And just to add, are we in a position to lock down cities like the Chinese have done?
Locking down cities is something which even the Chinese resorted to as a last resort. What generally, I lived in Beijing when SARS was raging at that point in time in Beijing. What they did was they used to quarantine blocks of city. Whichever block in which they found, the surrounding blocks, etc., they used to cordon off and then not allow anybody to come in and go out. So that kind of a system is what they adopted initially. And thereafter, when the thing spread, they locked down the entire thing. Locking down entire cities is an extreme measure. Unless the virus has spread so much that you don't want to actually go beyond a particular level, then you do that. That will be the last step that we need to look into. Coming to Parul's question of whether the medical system is tuned to it, I think with the notice that was available to us, I think the health ministry has got into action. The health secretary has been given increased powers to ensure actions on the coronavirus. The cabinet secretary has already coordinated the whole thing and then put it. The MEA has put out a point person to deal with this. So I think as a government, I think they have taken all necessary action that are required to be done. They also instructed hospitals, both private and the army and the paramilitary forces hospitals, to cater for any surge in the kind of cases that they may have to receive. And they all have been told to have isolation wards, etc., etc. I think the government has done what is required to be done. We only hope we don't have to use all those facilities.
If I may ask you a supplementary, you mentioned that the government has issued all these orders. But do we have the infrastructure? The Chinese just built hospitals overnight.
That is one way of looking at it, that you need to have built things overnight. Because what happened in China was the infection spread so quickly, the system couldn't accommodate so many people. But here, you knew that people who had come from outside have been quarantined already. People who have been brought back to India have been quarantined already. So slowly and steadily, we have built up that system. Hopefully, we don't have to use all the system, but I think we'll be prepared for it.
Tell me, there is this speculation that India's hot weather will kill the virus. I mean, what is the information you're getting?
In fact, there are a lot of information that has come out on this. There was some kind of a thing that was said that the moment the temperature warms up, this virus will die, etc., etc. The only thing that I think that some of the medical authorities also have spoken on record to say that it is basically it dries up quickly, and then what happens in this the spread is through any of the droplets, etc., which comes out of either in the sputum or on the saliva, etc., etc. Those dry off quickly in summer, and that reduces the life of the virus which is existing in that particular droplet. So that is the reason people say that it could probably reduce. Only the lifetime of the virus which is existing will reduce, but we need to wait and watch as to how this virus behaves when the temperature increases.
Yeah. General Narasimhan, now you've been a China watcher for many, many years. How do you see the impact of COVID-19 on the Chinese economy, the Indian economy, and of course the world economy broadly?
Chinese economy, what happened was, starting from January, most of the manufacturing units shut down. And somewhere in around the 10th or 12th of February, the Chinese government wanted all the workers to come back. But then it took some slack to catch up. At the moment, I think the factories have started working. And to an extent that probably at least 50 to 60% of them have come back on the production mode. Notwithstanding that, China has got a financial year accounting of the calendar year. January to December is the financial year of theirs. So they have lost out the first quarter definitely. And to remove the slack which has happened because of the first quarter manufacturing, they'll take another 1 or 2 quarters. So hopefully they shall catch up by the end of the last quarter, or maybe in the next financial year is where they'll be able to come full steam. The expectation is that the Chinese economy will reduce, the GDP growth of Chinese economy will reduce by 1.5%. There are varying estimates of it. Somebody says 1.2%, somebody says 1.5%. Whatever it is, the net effect will be approximately $150 to $200 billion will be the effect on the Chinese economy. There was a report a week back in Hindu saying that which all countries have lost how much money. European Union seems to have lost about $15.2 billion so far. US has lost about $5.8 billion. Similarly, if you work out, India at that point in time had lost about $348 million. That is basically because the spares, etc., which were to come from China, there was already a stock existing for a month or two with many of the manufacturing units, etc., in India. So they were actually running with that particular thing. The effect of it will be seen subsequently. As far as India is concerned, I think again India also will get hit in the manufacturing part, maybe by about 1% or so, is what one expects. As far as the world GDP is concerned, they were expected to grow around 2.9% this year. They'll grow by about 2.4%. That means the world GDP will go down by about 0.5%. This is what is generally being expected as of now. The issue is that once the things come back online in China, once the demand picks up, the demand also was already reducing because of the global issues that we are facing. The demand on China's production system was reducing as it is. In fact, the PMI index has come down to 40.3 index, which means anything below 50 is a contraction. So that is contracting. You will find a lot of things contracting in the economy in China as of today. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe in the third or fourth quarter, we'll get a clearer picture as to where we are.
Will this crisis push the move towards, kind of diversifying supply chains? You think it's going to accentuate that?
There is a sense of that. Like for example, even in India, there are certain manufacturing units which are overly dependent on
China.
Some spares coming in from China. They have realized that over dependence on one country for any supply can disrupt your manufacturing activity. So there is a sense that we need to probably indigenize. But we need to be cautious on that particular issue in the sense that the first reason why you went to China is because it was cost effective and you could get the correct kind of standard that you wanted. So if you are able to produce it earlier, why didn't you do it? We could have done it that time also. And there is a cost factor always involved in all this. So that is something that we need to look at. Second thing that we need to look at is in the supply chains in which China has got a monopoly. Like for example, rare earth materials. Like for example, lithium. These are the issues in which China has got a major monopoly. So those things when you have to redo the supply chain will become that much more difficult. So to some extent we may be able to diversify the supply chain, and to some extent we need to still be dependent on China.
What impact do you think this is going to have on the image of President Xi Jinping?
This is a question which a lot of people have been asking in the last couple of months, whether he handled it correctly, whether he didn't handle it correctly, etc. So in the Chinese media, you find a lot of writings on this coming up. In fact, they say that on the 7th of January, Mr. Xi Jinping had given the orders to lock down Wuhan. Probably took some more time for them to implement it, that's a different issue. And over a period of time, he has been actually saying what needs to be done, etc. And those things are coming out in the Chinese media. I get a feeling that they'll get back into normal shape, and I don't think Mr. Xi Jinping's image has been tarnished in any way as of now. The thing is that we need to keep waiting and watching as to how things are improving. Today, for the last 3 days, I am watching Chinese new cases in China have come down to about 24, 15, 12 other numbers I get to see. So obviously, they have been able to contain the infection in China now. And for a magnitude of this, I think even though if there has been some hesitation initially, I think they've handled it reasonably all right.
General Narasimhan, now what everyone also wants to know is there any cure, any vaccine in sight really to check the spread of the coronavirus?
Any virus, when it occurs like this, a new strain of virus that occurs, there is a time lag by which a vaccine is developed, and thereafter the preventive medication comes up. As per some reports, China says they are trying out certain vaccines at this point in time. It has gone for clinical trials as of now, but it has to be proven before it is used in any manner to treat this. So that will take at least another couple of months, 2 to 3 months to come up. Even by going by the Western reports that have come up on the vaccine part of it, they say by about June, by summer, they have said that vaccine may be available. So generally it takes about 6 to 7 months for any kind of vaccine to be developed when such viruses come up. And for a preventive medication to come up, like for example, some, the preventive vaccines that we do, that may take about another year more. So anybody who says the vaccine is already available, please take it with a pinch of salt. It is still not on. It will take a couple of months for us to get the first one, maybe around June or something. And beyond that, preventive medication will take some more time.
So last question, is the worst over? I mean, can we presume that, we are now slowly entering...
You will have to look at it from three different parts. If you look at China, I would say that the worst is over, because they have been able to contain it and they have been able to do it. The problem is the globe. Globally, if you see, when China reports 15 new cases, yesterday more than 7,000 cases have occurred all over the globe. So I get a feeling, as far as China is concerned, we can say generally the peak has been achieved, and it's here onwards it will be better stability. In the global, I think it will go further worse before it gets better. Even in India, we need to be extremely careful. The numbers are what we have, but I think it will again go a little more up before it comes down. So that is the way we need to see it. It has to be seen in parts. The ones which are affected initially are the ones which will probably go over the curve at this point in time. The others are still going up. They'll go up a little more before they stabilize.
General Narasimhan, on that note, thank you very much for that perspective.
Thank you very much.